Hi, I'm Chris Ford, and on behalf of Mark Newview and myself, welcome to Expanding the View into Post-Professional Degree Programs. It is being recorded for our revisitation and perhaps also for sharing with our colleagues. Before introducing today's four panelists, let me offer some background and some context. And that is that the ACSA is the largest membership organization of its kind in North America, and 100% of its full members offer professional degrees in architecture. According to the ACSA's 2019 Institutional Data Report, there are 57 Bachelor of Architecture degree programs, 127 Master of Architecture programs, and then also the University of Hawaii's unique Doctorate of Architecture. But also of these full programs, of these full members, 82 are home to post-professional graduate degree programs, and 39 or more offer doctoral degree programs. These programs have no obligation to fulfill degree requirements for professional licensure, and they are instrumental in the development of any shared culture of original research in architecture. Distinction between professional and post-professional programs is important. It's an important one, and the key differences are not typically isolated and examined within the ACSA community. Therefore, we're grateful for this opportunity to do this today. It's likely all ACSA member schools are asked by respective institutional administrations to measure and increase their respective program impacts. This is especially true for those located in R1 universities, where university-wide evaluations of colleges may be provoking architecture faculties to pivot away from creative discovery and towards generating new knowledge found of value to either smaller interdisciplinary fields or the larger discipline itself. In response, many ACSA schools have or are leveraging their BArch and MArch programs to increase capacity for research production. However, it's worth pointing out that other disciplines do not place the responsibility of research upon their respective professional programs. So for instance, in law, there is the JD degree, the Juris Doctorate. However, it's the PhD in law that has that burden for original research. In medicine, the emphasis is on the PhD, not the MD. For me personally, let's just say for the past several years, I've been personally immersed in a graduate level research culture of mechanical engineering. And in this ecosystem, there is a tenured or a tenure track faculty who develops an individual research lab that has the appearance of a full research ecosystem that consists of Master of Science and Engineering students, PhD students, postdocs, full-time research staff, and also includes visiting faculty and students from other schools. So what does the post-professional train in architecture look like? Let me really quickly go to sharing my screen to introduce our panelists. So for planning this session, what we tried to do was to find the four far corners of post-professional degrees in architecture. And we think that we've done that today by intentionally inviting the respective directors of highly diverse post-professional degree programs to join us. In order of presentation today, I should back up a little bit. Our format is that each of the four panelists have pre-recorded a video of approximately 10 minutes in length that explains their program in various detail. That'll be far beyond what you guys can learn through their respective websites. And so our first panelist is Jeremy Fika from Carnegie Mellon. He's an associate professor of architecture as well as a track chair for the Master of Advanced Architectural Design degree program. Points to Jeremy for the acronym of MAD. We also have Ellen Dimming, a professor of landscape architecture at North Carolina State University and is the director of the Doctor of Design program. We also have Malika Inanuga, who is an associate professor of architecture at University of Washington and also director of the Master of Science program, Master of Science in Architecture program. And lastly, we have Fernando Lara, who's a professor of architecture and the director of the PhD in Architecture program at University of Texas, Austin. Thank you, panelists, very much for joining us today. Before throwing it to Carol, Mark, any other opening comments?
I just want to say thank you to all the panelists as well as Chris for putting this together. After the four presentations, we will have an open conversation. And if you want to put any questions in the chat, we can get those to the panelists. We also have a few pre-loaded questions to start things off, but we're happy to actually get the questions from the chat. So during the presentations, if you have any questions, please feel free to post. Thanks again.
With that, thank you. And Carol, please start us off.
The Master of Advanced Architectural Design is a post-professional design research graduate program in the School of Architecture at Carnegie Mellon University that leverages design synthesis to forge connections across knowledge domains. It offers students the flexibility to tailor a unique path of study that builds upon core strengths within the school. With a particular emphasis on design inquiry, the 4-semester program leverages the School of Architecture's core strengths in materiality and construction, architectural robotics, computational design, and ecological thinking as vehicles for knowledge acquisition and speculation. The program focuses on the creation of new insights and new knowledge or research through the design process or research by design. The MAD program seeks to probe the technical and cultural opportunities and implications of a data-rich future in which design methodologies, construction processes, and sustainable building life cycles are intrinsically interlaced. The goal is consciously speculative and experimental work that is deeply enmeshed with social and environmental concerns, with explicit ties to humanistic and cultural discourses, industry, and contemporary practice. The faculty seek advanced level projects that will position graduates as future thought leaders in architecture and allied fields relating to advanced fabrication, material performance, construction methodologies, or academia. Carnegie Mellon's emphasis on interdisciplinary learning, its computational culture, world-class robotic fabrication facilities, and a dedicated group of faculty offer unique hands-on opportunities for experimentation and speculation in the context of a small-scale, yet globally focused school and university. While the School of Architecture at Carnegie Mellon is relatively small in student body, the school is comprised of several graduate and undergraduate programs, including the 2 other studio graduate programs, the Master of Architecture and the Master of Urban Design. Our school's small size necessitates strategic alignments across programs, such as in courses and resources, but also presents unique opportunities to seed collaborations, challenge program silos, and foster a singular graduate school culture. The MAD program capacity of 6 to 10 students per year preserves low student to faculty ratios and facilitates opportunities for direct engagement with faculty. The program's relatively small size aligns with the size of the school's other graduate programs. The graduate programs in the School of Architecture draw students from across the globe, resulting in a diverse set of past experiences, frames of reference, and cultural traditions. The STEM classification of the MAD program affords these students domestic employment opportunities post-graduation. The MAD program is funded exclusively through graduate student tuition. Graduate program tuition across Carnegie Mellon is set by each school or college and is administered differently than undergraduate allocations, which are based upon 5-year student yield trends. The university sequesters a central administration surcharge and directs the remaining funds to the school. Average student aid, student assistantship allowance, and track chair discretionary funding are subtracted from the school allocation, resulting in the net contribution to the school's operating budget. The MAD curriculum offers the flexibility to craft a highly customized path of study rooted in design and research. The curriculum is structured around a studio and research project sequence, a research prep and research method sequence, and a series of selective and elective courses. Advanced synthesis option studios in the first year foreground an array of prescient topics and methodologies. These vertically integrated studios encourage interdisciplinary collaboration from the arts and technology, research and design, large-scale urban and ecological thinking, to detailed investigations of materials, fabrication strategies, and form strategies. In the fall of 2020, the school introduced ASO Studio semester themes in an effort to situate areas of concern for the school while facilitating discourse across studios. Beginning in the fall of 2021, as part of the school's strategic graduate programs realignment, the Pro Seminar and Design Research Method courses will be structured to include shared and program-specific modules. This will draw in faculty from across our graduate programs, promote a single graduate school identity, and limit redundancies in course offerings and instruction across programs. The Pro Seminar and Thesis Prep introduce contemporary discourse and modes of inquiry, while a diverse range of selective courses within the School of Architecture, along with elective courses offered across the university, foster synthesis across knowledge domains. The first year curriculum prepares students for a year-long, independently determined but closely mentored design research project in the second year. This capstone project leverages the power, creativity, and speculative nature of the design process to generate new knowledge, ideas, understanding, practices, or paradigms. While the design research projects are individually conducted in the final year of the program, it is common for prior collaborations across programs to inform design research topics and methods. The MAD program is invested in student research situated within an expanded discipline of architecture. Projects have operated across a range of scales, methodologies, and mediums. They have consisted of a diverse range of topics, including additive robotic fabrication, material reclamation, human-machine collaboration, digital craft, and responsive building systems. This breadth reflects the expanded territory of the discipline and points to alternate modes of practice. The flexibility of the MAD curriculum provides students with opportunities to tailor their trajectory through the program to their interests. For many, this requires coursework beyond the school. The culminating design research project challenges students to synthesize this knowledge and explore its application to an expanded discipline.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity to join the panel on post-professional degree programs. My name's Ellen Deming. I'm director of the Doctor of Design program at NC State University. And it's always a pleasure to speak about this relatively young academic venture. I hope that this very rapid overview of the DDES program at NC State will give you enough shape and substance to get a conversation started when the time comes. The DDES program was initiated by former Dean Marvin Malika and a team of faculty members in the College of Design at NC State for the express purpose of addressing the applied research needs of practicing professionals. The DDES program was shaped to address several issues. It allows the College of Design to address changing demographics among lifelong design learners and to strengthen knowledge partnerships with design professionals and to take advantage of improved online instructional technology. The program proposal was approved in fall 2016. And in fall 2017, I was hired to start up and build the program. And in fall 2018, we admitted our first cohort of 8 students. This fall, we'll admit our 4th cohort. Our students are mature practitioners, many of them leaders in their fields. The average is 16 years of experience. And they cover the waterfront of design and practice sectors, private practice, not-for-profits, government, and academia. Their research is typically embedded within their own practices, and thus the learning benefits are immediate and synergistic in real time. And for us, this is one of the most exciting dimensions of the DDES program. And for that reason, this is a hybrid program. All the courses are delivered online, but we also require semi-annual immersion programs. Ideally, these would be intensives, on-campus residence residencies where we run workshops, advising sessions, hold tours and social events, as well as public-facing academic features in both fall and spring. The immersion programs are really valuable for group bonding and trust building and orientation to the standards and the protocols of the program. They allow the DDES students to mingle with PhD students on campus and present their research progress reports to the College of Design. Along with the DDES-sponsored lecture series, we aim to provide DDES students with a platform to make their work visible and valuable to the larger college community. And these images are making me very nostalgic since we just finished running our third COVID-era immersion program entirely online. It's just not the same. Now, we think Richard Buchanan's 4 Orders of Design describes the very plastic field of design research very well. And in parallel, the DDES program is organized by domains like these rather than disciplines, where entry-level professional students might do a thesis that falls into the first or second order domain, for example, text or image or object design. DDES dissertation topics typically fall into the third or fourth order domains, process, strategy, and experience design, or systems, organization, and design culture. It can be a challenge to help students turn a meta question about design culture into a researchable problem, but that's what we do. That's the service we offer. Here are some generic keywords for actual dissertation topics that DDES students are working on right now at NC State. And you can see that they mainly encompass third and fourth order design domains. In discussing the program's purpose, which we were asked to do, it's crucial to keep the student practitioners' stories and questions and needs front and center, because they're the ones telling us what this program wants to be, needs to be. In addition to advancing design research and supporting the design professions and linking the practice of design to larger bodies of knowledge, I think the key statement is highlighted. The curriculum is designed to help practitioners become leaders in the design disciplines and to foster a culture of engagement with design research and thus transform how designers respond to society. In a sense, what we're interested in doing with this program is making the design disciplines leaders in the discourse around societal needs. Our college comprises a School of Architecture and 3 departments: landscape architecture and environmental planning, industrial design and graphic design, and also art and design, which is essentially digital arts and media. And the students that you see here are working with advisors across all 4 units. A handful of faculty advise 2, 3, or even 4 DDES students in different cohorts. But the majority of our faculty will advise just 1. If our faculty haven't got the capacity or expertise or elasticity to advise an applicant, then we don't admit them. We can't. That said, another one of the special signatures of the DDES program is its translational and transdisciplinary character that is inherent to the types of questions that our students are interested in. It's also one of the learning outcomes of the program. In our 3rd year now, we are developing an assessment process for the program and gathering data of various kinds to help us evaluate actual versus aspirational learning outcomes. And we're looking forward to the results of that. Another special feature of the DDES program is its curricular flexibility. Students can move through the program at 1, 2, or 3 courses per semester and change it up if and as life demands. Our first ABD student passed his prelims in November, and he plans to graduate this coming December 4 other students are setting up their preliminary exams in coming months. So we're very excited about the progress of the first cohort of students. The panel organizers asked us to share some nuts and bolts about program administration. So here it is. Our DDES program is in some ways an intrapreneurial venture inside the university because it's fully self-funded. And that means students pay out of pocket. There are no assistantships or research positions, and you can understand why, since it's a distance program. Students can form research partnerships with their advisors and go after grants together or be hired as consultants on grants. That's a separate matter. But our budget and our salary lines are based entirely on tuition receipts, including premium tuition or buyouts. And so we need a critical mass of students to break even. We have calculated that with around 32 to 36 active students, we'll get there this year. We'll get close this year for sure. And as you can imagine, the university is watching our little experiment very carefully. In the end, however, the headcounts don't matter because the program is funded essentially by student credit hours or SCH production. The only thing that matters is enrollments. We calculate that at 400 credit hours a year, the program reaches steady state. As you surely know, though, doctoral credit hours are not necessarily efficient to produce. All taught courses in the DDES program are co-instructed also by 2 people from different disciplines. And this started as aspirational, but it's now part of the culture of the program. This gives us the intellectual elasticity to run intensive seminars with around 8 or 12 doctoral students with interests running in wildly different directions. In-house, the program has 1 support staff member and just 2 full-time faculty members, both of whom teach from time to time in other units. It's a very lean organization. Yes, we hire professional practitioners to partner with instructors of record, and they seem to enjoy it, and it helps our relationships with the top firms. We learn a lot, and it buttresses our real-world expertise in the seminars. That said, it can be costly to find and hire instructors who make a good fit with our program goals. So bringing this in for a landing, in designing the DDES program, our guiding questions address scales of design practice, of design impact, of design leadership, and especially strategies for design research that can be produced and applied in real-world enterprises. And we surely recognize that many design practices have made serious commitments to research for many reasons, not least to acquire and perhaps signal their expertise. But as Tom Fisher at the University of Minnesota has eloquently questioned, how will design professions, such as architecture, become comfortable sharing what we know, what we ought to find out, and especially what we can and should learn from our own failures? For a practice-based design research program like ours, this is a powerful provocation. And we think it can happen when mid-career design leaders take the plunge and invest in their own deep learning. And when they're ready, we stand ready to guide and support them. And so I thank you for your attention and for your questions when it's time to take them. I'll see you shortly.
Hello, my name is Mehika Inanıcı. I'm an associate professor at the University of Washington and director of Master of Science program in architecture in the design technology track. Master of Science in our department was established in 2001 as an umbrella program with specific areas of concentration or tracks. The first track was design computing, and it is recently revised and renamed as design technology. The second track is the history and theory of architecture, and it has been operational since 2007. Each track has a distinct focus and a different director. The decision to offer the Master of Science degree in our department was directly informed by the growing need for professionals with advanced education. And the idea is to address the increasing complexity of architectural knowledge by studying specific issues or areas, in contrast to the broad-based education required in the professional degree program. The overarching mission of our Master of Science program is to make high-quality graduate education available to individuals to broaden and improve their intellectual, professional, and technical capabilities. Architects at any stage of their career seeking further education in a particular area of focus, and people with degrees in allied disciplines seeking to pursue careers in the architecture, engineering, construction industry are the typical applicants of our program. The second mission is to facilitate the pursuit of advanced research in response to the rapid growth of knowledge and the quickening pace of technological change in our profession. Master of Science degree is a 2-year program. A minimum of 45 quarter credits is required for the completion of degree. It consists of 32 credits of coursework, 4 credits of thesis proposal, and minimum 9 credits of thesis. Core course requirements are limited to 11 credits, and the rest of the program requirements are structured to fit the individual areas of specialization. This is a typical curriculum for a design technology track student. In the first year, students build the necessary knowledge base and the skill sets. We operate on a quarter system, and there are 3 required courses in the first year. Selectives allow the students to take courses based on their research area. And in the second year, they mainly focus on their thesis research. Selectives can be taken from our departments, our college, or other units in the university among the courses that are 400 level or above. All of our 400 and 500 level courses in the design technology area can be taken by our Master of Architecture students and Master of Science students. In the design technology track, students typically take courses from College of Engineering and College of Environments as well. Along with the courses on their area of specialization, we encourage them to take courses such as statistics, computer programming, and machine learning to support sound methodological approaches in their thesis work. The design computing track was initially kept small, as it was overseen by a small number of dedicated faculty who routinely and concurrently supervised Master of Architecture and PhD students. Therefore, it was necessary to limit the cohort to 4 or less students. But we are currently growing, especially after the revision to the design technology. Currently, there are 11 full-time faculty whose research and grant funding align with the area of design technology. We have the capacity to grow up to 8 or 10 students per cohort. We have 46 alumni in this program and 6 students working towards their degree. The history theory track has 15 full-time faculty and 21 alumni. There are currently 5 students in the program. Students may receive partial funding during their studies. The top scholar is offered to 1 incoming student as a scholarship. Applied Research Consortium, or ARC, is a new initiative spearheaded by our Dean, René Chang. An ARC fellow has the opportunity to lead an applied research project with an ARC firm, exploring current issues in the built environment and gaining professional experience. The fellowship formally begins in the second year of the program and depends on the successful matchmaking of an ARC project and the right student. Other typical opportunities are teaching and research assistant positions. We have 5 research centers and labs in our department. Students can be employed in these centers and labs based on funding availability, merit, and a good fit between the student qualifications and the project. The research in the design technology track falls one of the focus areas, and these areas are design computing, building performance simulation, sustainable systems and design, high performance buildings, materials and fabrication, structural analysis, life cycle analysis, and food, water, energy nexus. The typical outcome of the research includes the development of metrics, tools, and techniques, demonstration of prototypes, or application of computational tools for facilitating informed design decisions or sustainable fabrication and construction techniques. The thesis you see here ranges from acoustic, lighting, and thermal simulations to fabrication and computation. Thesis in the history and theory track broadly focuses on architectural, cultural, and political forces that shape the continuing discourse of modernity in architecture. I would like to conclude my presentation with alumni. Some of our alumni continue their education in PhD programs, and a larger percentage of our alumni work in the industry. Typical paths include working as design technologists in architectural firms, and they become the drivers of research and technology. Some alumni work as environmental consultants in the building industry, and a few work in tech companies. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Fernando Lara, and I am the director of the PhD program in architecture here at the University of Texas at Austin. I am here in this beautiful background of our library reading room, a building by Tess Gilbert that is exactly 110 years old. It was opened in 1911. I want to thank Chris Ford and Mark Naveau for organizing this session and inviting us here this afternoon to talk about post-professional programs. We have several post-professional programs at the UT School of Architecture, and I will talk about the PhD program today. The PhD program in architecture was created 25 years ago. It's the second PhD program at UT. We have another one, the PhD program in planning, that is older and more traditional and slightly larger than the PhD program in architecture. But it was created in 1995 under the leadership of Anthony Olofsson, and has graduated a little over 25 PhDs in those 26 years. The program started small and is still small. We accept only 2 or 3 students per year. And we grew from architectural history, which was the beginning of the program, into 3 concentration areas. We have now historic preservation, we have sustainability, and we have the architectural history. That is the oldest one. We overall, as a faculty, we are 12 members of the faculty that hold PhD degrees 12 members of the architecture faculty, but we also invite colleagues from planning or from art history or from American history to participate in our dissertation committees and our events. But those 12 faculty members are the core of the program. And to give you an idea, right now we have only 11 students in the program, 2 defended this year, and we are expecting 3 to start in the fall. So we gravitate between 10 and 14 students, and it's almost the same number of faculty. So it's a very high student to faculty ratio. The School of Architecture here at Texas don't have departments. We are large, or we're not very big, but we are large enough. We have 650 students total, and we have over 70 faculty members. And we are organized around the programs. It's the program that organizes us, that gives students tremendous flexibility to take courses with anybody all the time. Of course, the programs, the different degrees have their required courses, but there's a tremendous transit of students. Planning students take my courses. Our PhD students take courses in urban design or landscape is another program that we have that overlap a lot with the PhD program. So that gives the students a lot of flexibility and a lot of interdisciplinarity to create their dissertation committees. So the structure of the program is that it's a small program inside a large school of architecture. We try to engage studio as much as possible. We try to encourage our students to participate in studio reviews and to participate in studio conversations, as much as we invite studio faculty to our colloquia, to our debates, to our dissertation defenses and proposals. So in terms of funding and capacity, those two things are one and the same. We have a small capacity. We only admit 2 or 3 students per year because that's the amount that we can fund. We don't like to admit students with no funding. It's counterproductive. It doesn't work. And in the end, it creates a lot of funding problems down the road. So we have a variety of funding. We have recruiting funding, which are one package of 4 years of funding. So the graduate school gives us one package of full 4 years of funding, and we have the ability to slice this package in order to recruit 2 or 3 students. So on a normal year, one of our students will receive an offer of 2 years full funding, and the other years it will be covered by teaching assistantships, and another student will receive only 1 year of full funding, and the other years will be covered by teaching assistantships. We have a good number of TAs in the history survey courses and in the sustainability courses, and a little bit less in the historic preservation area. But all our students, if they don't have fellowships to be working solely on dissertation and field research, archival research, they are teaching, they are being TAs, and they are funded by our teaching assistantships. It's a challenge. It creates all kinds of stress when students need to finish the dissertation, but can only be funded by a TA-ship that is very demanding. It's not ideal. I see some of our peer institutions offering the students 4 years, offering many students 4 years of full funding. But that's the situation that we have at the University of Texas, and we work with that. we also have other fellowships and scholarships that are competitive that students should apply for in order to fund field research or travel or just be able to be writing and not teaching in the final year to complete the dissertation. In terms of research output, the large, 99% of our research output is publication, peer-reviewed publications. So we encourage our students to publish even before finishing their dissertations. It's fundamental for the job market. It's fundamental for them to be able to secure jobs. Publications are the main measurement by which we judge young scholars in architectural history and in historic preservation. We also produce in much smaller numbers things like software, and we have a student right now on historic preservation that is working on a software integrating a little app integrating GIS and preservation information to help map historic preservation. So those are the answers to the 5 questions that Chris and Mark sent us. I also wanted to say that here at Texas, we have 2 very strong geographic concentrations. We have a number of faculty members that work on Central and Eastern Europe, from Austria to the Czech Republic to Russia, and they create a very strong cluster that is very well recognized. And we have the following up the tradition of Anthony Olofsson and Richard Cleary, we have the concentration on the Americas that now is mostly carried on by myself, Sara Lopez, Michael Holleran, and Benjamin Ibarra. So between the Americas and Central and Eastern Europe, our PhD program thrives, and our students have been able to get really good academic jobs, even in this terrible job market that we experienced in the last many few years, and got much worse this year with COVID and all the budget cuts that come out of that. I'm very happy to tell that the 3 students that are finishing this year are either they already have a job lined up, or they are finalists in teaching positions, and they we expect them to get good offers now in the month of April. So we are working well. We have the challenge of engaging more with studio and being more relevant to studio education. But I would finish just saying that some of us that teach on the PhD program have spent decades on the periphery of the conversation, talking about issues of race, gender, inequality, exclusion. And in the last very few years, those issues moved to the center of the conversation of architectural education, and we are happy to move with them. So I see the PhD programs everywhere, not only here in Texas, but in California, in the Midwest, in the East Coast. I see the PhD programs taking the lead on the conversation on diversity and equity that is so urgent for architecture schools. Thank you, and I look forward to our conversation soon. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all. I just wanted to echo Chris's comment in the chat. If anyone has a question, please feel free to put it into the chat. I have a whole bunch of questions. The presentations were great, so thank you all for putting the effort in putting those together. And a special thanks to Fernando for wearing the same clothes, so he sort of looked live with the same background. Well played, sir.
It's COVID uniform.
It's all good. It's all good. There was a question that was posed prior to the session that I actually think is actually quite relevant, and it builds upon some of the comments you were making, Fernando, about the metrics of success. So the metrics, if I heard you, what I will try to mirror back to you is that the metrics of success for your students are peer-reviewed publications and academic positions. It strikes me as some of the other programs have other sort of relationships with industry, with the practice. So I wonder if you could maybe touch on, and this is an open question, so whomever wants to jump in, what is the value of a post-professional program outside of academia? How does it relate to the profession? What does it do for a, why would a mid-career person come back, spend 2 years, pay a lot of money, and get the credential? Like what are some alternate paths, or not alternate, what are some other paths? And I'll open that up. And Fernando, I'm particularly curious for you, given that the peer review publication and academic position, what we might call maybe a traditional PhD pathway, you were really clear about. So I wonder if students are doing other things.
I think the PhD program is the most traditional of those post-professional programs, and yes, 90% of our students are interested in continuing academia and are trying to secure teaching jobs. I've been here for 12 years now, and I only recall 3 students that are not in tenure track or tenure jobs. One already had a job in the preservation office in Mexico. The other one also works for preservation in a preservation office, in an office that deals with preservation. And the third one works for the government. So it's the PhD is certainly the most traditional of all. And we are pressured every year to choose our own metrics and to do our own self-evaluation. And it comes back to peer review and academic jobs. It doesn't get much further from that.
I to build on that a little bit.
Please.
I think at least in the context of a post-professional master's program, I think historically a lot of the desire and interest for students to perhaps go back after they've already had either a BArch or an MArch is to drill down and develop particular areas of expertise, which then helps to distinguish them in the marketplace in a way. And I think there's a host of master's level programs that have very particular identities and very specific coursework to distinguish themselves and to deliver that core set of expertise for those students. One of the things that we tried to do with the MAD program, which is some programs do this of post-professional, although ironically they tend to be called post-professional MArch programs, such as the GSD and other schools have had them for quite some time, but we've set it up with studios. So I think when you survey the terrain, you'll find that there's a number of MS or MA programs that are generally non-studio based. And what that allows for is to really focus one's attention on developing that particular area of expertise. What we elected to do with the studio is really make the assertion that it's important for those skills and techniques to apply themselves and be synthesized through design, and for the project ultimately to be situated within design. But that admittedly takes a particular type of a student that is willing to incorporate that as part of their process.
I would like to add a little bit as well. Basically, I do see a change in attitudes towards research from practitioners. We have a research methodology class where we routinely invite practitioners and ask them what kind of research do you perform in your firms, or are you interested with collaboration with academia? And a very routine answer I have been getting is there's an appetite and hunger for research in practice. I would say that this has developed in the past 10 years in my experience. And the reason it really works is I think there is now an understanding that you can decouple a research project from an immediate design project. So we are moving away from action or option research in the practice, and it's becoming more of a performing rigorous applied research with the idea that it would be applied in future projects. And I think this narrows the gap between academia and practice, and therefore opens up employment after graduation in architectural firms.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Malika. I think that closing the gap there in the research enterprise is really important for the mid-career professionals that our DDES program serves. I think the value added has a lot to do with enterprise level learning. It isn't to say that students don't come to us with a specific question about a specific topic that that they want to develop and claim expertise for, that may have really begun or grown in an organic way in their practice as tacit knowledge. But I think that there's also a level of learning that occurs at the enterprise level, where a firm learns from its successes and its failures, from case studies and from comparative case studies, from legacy plans, and much of our coursework is actually oriented to that enterprise level. The other part of our work is very much focused on research, the craft of research, the literature analysis, the gap finding, the framing, and the development of a research protocol for people who may have not been exposed to that in their professional training some years ago, just a few years ago. And so we're really trying to bridge that gap and close that gap. The benefits are really to look outside the disciplines for lessons that may be applied in an analogous way to a design problem. And that's challenging to teach as well as to learn. But we also think that this potentially leads, this kind of learning and this kind of capacity leads to transformational leadership at the enterprise scale.
It's interesting. There's another question that might relate to that, having to do with how can post-professional programs be linked to IDP so that professionals can be paired with sort of interns in academia. There's a model at the University of Washington. I'm going to tee you up, Malika. Do you want to talk about Renee's work between the practice, academia, and I think it's a consortium?
Yes, it's ARC for short. Applied Research Consortium was started a few years ago, and the idea is that architectural firms commit to be part of this consortium and provide certain funding. And each year they come up with a project or a number of projects they want to work with our students and the faculty member. So it becomes a matchmaking between the faculty, student, and the ARC firm. And students usually in their second year of the MS program or last year of the Master of Architecture program get involved in the ARC fellowship. And as part of that, they do not only perform the research under the guidance of the faculty as well as the firm, but they also get employed by the architectural firm for 15 hours. So it's a joint experience of research along with professional experience. It's a new program, but I do believe that it's really yielding brilliant results. Students usually say that it was a great experience. And I think it really opens up the path for employment right away. From a faculty perspective, I will be working with an ARC fellow next year. I haven't had the experience yet, but with the great alignment between the faculty expertise and the project in hand, it gives the faculty a direct impact on a immediate or soon to be done design project. So it's very rewarding to see the transfer of knowledge from academic research to application. I would say that I do certainly hope that the ARC firms will grow in number. Currently, we have 4 firms, 4 projects, 4 students.
So one of the, a couple of questions in the chat that I want to try to bring together in a way might relate to that. Ellen brought up the idea of lifelong learning. You've used the word enterprise, and at ASU, that's a very specific word for us. For Michael Crow, the university is actually called an enterprise, but the enterprise model is much more entrepreneurial. It's less about exclusion, it's more about inclusion. It's about rethinking the revenue streams in higher education, rethinking about access, all those sorts of things. So in each of the programs, there is a specifically exclusive model, and it's a model that's based around finances, probably. It's also maybe a model based around traditional thinking around research, that it needs to be very focused, very small, very, monk-like in a way, right? I wonder if each of you could talk about the potential for opportunity to scale. And what I mean by that is, for example, having impact for the work that students are doing in, for example, professional education, continuing professional education. There's a huge amount of scale there. And it seems to me there's an opportunity that potentially the work that's happening in these post-professional programs might have a relationship to lifelong learning, for example. It relates to the people in the classroom. Like, who are the students in your classes? Are they only the students in a specific post-professional programs, or is that knowledge, does that have impact outside of the seminar room or outside of the laboratory? So maybe if each of you, and it's a loaded question in some ways, and there's a multi-pronged approach, I could imagine. But is there an opportunity, do you think, in each of your programs for scale? Could we teach to more students? Could we teach to more lifelong learners? Could we teach to more architects? Could we do this at a different scale? Any thoughts on that? Ellen, you're smiling.
I'm smiling because the idea of teaching more students just makes me tired. But I think one of the things we've thought a lot about doing is not opening the DDES program and the traditional dissertation protocols and the that transformative journey that students will take, but opening the courses perhaps through other mechanisms like certificate programs, continuing education, where, for example, during our immersion programs, we offer a symposium every August, and we offer a lecture series every March. And there's no reason why those events can't be scaled. And again, I think, let's see, I think it was Jeremy talking about themes. And our symposia are themed. So one year it was learning from failure. Last year, of course, it was health and design. And so these are ways that we can bundle and expose the variety of projects that students and faculty are working on together. That said, also one of the questions in the chat was about how exclusive the classes are. All of our classes are open to PhD students on campus. We obviously have a PhD program in design that's now almost 20 years old, more. But we also frequently have PhD students from other disciplines coming in, parks and recreation, for example, or this year, interestingly enough, lots of students from psychology. So we want to use the DDES program as a kind of repository of new knowledge and share that widely with professionals in many different fields. But I I like the idea of scaling it, but it would probably involve different mechanisms than the dissertation.
Yeah, it also could, if you think about how professional education is handled, and also just thinking about how models of access are at our universities. I don't think we don't need 10,000 more dissertations, but there might be different models, and the content that's developed might be disseminated in different ways. But I'll open up that question still. Other ideas around access, lifelong learning, exclusion?
I think the only silver lining that I see of this awful year that we experienced with the pandemic, and that we are hopefully getting out of in the coming month, is the fact that we normalized online events and online lectures. I think there's a tremendous opportunity there especially to disseminate our knowledge. We are not very much a knowledge-based discipline. Our journals' impact factor are dismal. And I don't know if that should change. I mean, I don't know.
Don't get me started.
Yeah,
That's a whole nother conversation.
So, yeah, I think there's something there that speaks to the core of architecture and might be a lost battle in the way that we are always looking for the next new thing, and we are never following precedent or reading journals or citing properly the root of ideas. But that's a good conversation between the doctorate degrees and the studio culture. The important thing is to take our knowledge out there. We have a responsibility with society. We need to be reclaiming our voice. And we do have the power to envision a better future. So we need to use that power for good. If there's one thing that the PhD programs are leading, is a very deep reflection on how the powers of design were used for exclusion and inequality in the 20th century. So we need to turn that page. And to turn that page, we need to bring our conversations to the general public in a much better way.
Jeremy or Malika?
Yeah, just to echo a little bit of Fernando's comments, I do think this past year for us has been an interesting challenge for those students that are enrolled in the program but residing far away for a whole host of these issues related to visa and other challenges. And for a program like ours that historically has relied a lot upon haptic learning, direct engagement of techniques and methodologies, how one does that virtually, I think, is an interesting challenge. I don't think we've come close to solving it necessarily, but I do think that there's opportunity there. And I really appreciate the question mark of what is the kind of currency and the engagement of the program beyond the traditional enrolled student. We've had some interesting success in past with collaborations with industry partners. In a way, a number of the folks that we would interact with through those partnerships, while they weren't students in a traditional sense, the folks from industry, they acknowledged that this as much was an endeavor, a kind of learning opportunity for them as it was for the students that were enrolled within the program. So it ultimately didn't result in a degree or certificate awarded, but I think it cracked open ever so slightly what the possibilities were for folks to engage the program outside the confines of a traditional student that is in the studio.
If I could go back to another question in the chat, which relates to financial access. Fernando, I really like the sentiment and the conversation around, conversations around race, inclusion, equity, diversity. But it still seems like the folks in our post-professional programs, are not necessarily there, right? I think we could do a better job. I think if we look at the ACSA data on this, it doesn't look great, right? And so I wonder if there are different even funding models, right? So the funding model that I've heard from a number of you is that in some instances, like I think Fernando, you were referring to Texas A&M, where they have too many scholarships to give away, right? They're constantly, they're well funded, et cetera. A lot of other programs are using undergraduate SCE to fund post-professional programs. So that means you have to really build up your undergraduate, which means often teaching to a lot of students, but still the funding isn't quite there yet. Others are totally self-funded, which is a limiting factor. So in your programs, and Meliko, the ARC, I know Renee's interest in inclusion, the ARC fellowship is really about that. It's about access. So has there been conversation about funding models in your program relative to the JEDI conversations that have been going on?
Very much so. This is central.
Great.
And the University of Texas is a very wealthy school. I mean, I guess everybody knows the endowments here are significant, but they're all based on oil and other Texas industries. So it creates all kinds of interesting stress when you're trying to build a program on sustainability or equity versus we have a university president that teaches real estate at the School of Business. We had a conversation with him this morning that was really interesting. So we have the stress of the funding model, and I think it's an issue for the entire profession. The funding is an issue to pay internships. The funding is an issue. I mean, our graduates are not very well paid. And that's one reason why minority students don't apply to schools of architecture, is because they're going to need to pay their student loans right away. They don't have the family cushion to support them for many, many years of low-paid internships and long hours in the architecture office, etc. I think the funding issue is central if we really want a more diverse profession. But Washington is doing something right, because when Melika showed all the alumni of the program there, the diversity was amazing, just from the photographs. I wish we had that much. So there's something there in Seattle that we should learn from.
Ellen, you look like you just unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I wanted to address this question. Obviously, as a self-funded program, this is a tough nut to crack, but I'd like to present a slightly different argument, which is that if you don't require your students to relocate, you also don't ask them to pay the opportunity cost of stepping out of the workforce or out of a salaried position in order to take the PhD or to take a doctorate. And what we have found is that most of our students are part-time. They're working their way through the program, 1-2 courses at a time. They'll go year-round, so they can pace themselves and they can pace the payments, and they're still getting a paycheck. They're still, in most cases, working full-time, and so the opportunity cost is actually much lower for them. It's essentially like buying an expensive car, which people don't seem to, turn a hair when it comes to buying expensive toys like that. So why wouldn't you take that amount and invest it in your own knowledge base? So I don't know that this is definitive by any stretch, but in our first 3 cohorts, we have about 30% representation from BIPOC students, and we're pleased with that. And we think it's probably because we're making this level of learning accessible for them where they are, for students who are running firms and don't want to step out of their professional identity or their family life, or sell a house and move to Raleigh. So we've had I think pretty good experience so far. We'll see.
I think I'd like to add that, yes, we are having intense level of discussions in our college in terms of issues of equity, and we are seeing some results out of it. But one of the most important things is to recognize that how much work is ahead of us. And to me, part of it is really understanding the bottlenecks and problems. But the other hand is really, it boils down to finding funding, because it is they are really closely related to offer opportunities to students who may not be able to come without funding and support. And it's an ongoing discussion, and I think it's the right thing to do.
Chris or Jeremy first?
Yeah, as a private institution, it's definitely something that we're very acutely aware of, and the perception of the tuition cost of the institution is unfortunately a deterrent for a lot of people from applying in the first place. And because we are a fully self-funded program and in a school that does not have an enormous endowment, we need to find ways of being strategic about how we can compete in what is a pretty brutal marketplace, unfortunately, amongst graduate master's level programs of the funding that is available to students. So one thing we've tried and is a useful instrument is to offer a teaching fellowship for students in their second year. So those students that perhaps have a little bit more experience under their belt can teach a lower level studio or be more directly engaged above the line of a traditional teaching assistantship. And that can go a long way in terms of offsetting the tuition costs. But even that is something that perhaps might only be for a semester or for a year. So I for our institution, one of the primary differences is that outside of the sequestration of funds that the university takes from the top, the rest are sent back to the school to use how they see fit. And I think that we're very interested in approaching our graduate programs as one graduate school and understanding that there is one pot of funds and not that each program has to live and die based upon just the funds that come in with the number of students. So that is a shift that is just now happening. And I think the hope there is that it allows us to be more strategic in attracting a more diverse cohort of students and providing much more financial support.
Without triggering Mark, I'd like to circle back to and perhaps build on this question of the role of publication. Mark has 11 years invested in the JAE. I have 5 years invested in TAD, and we recognize the impact factors, which is a criteria that makes journals more attractive to submit peer-reviewed manuscripts to. That for JAE and TAD, that they're right now relatively weak. And so I'm curious, all 4 of the schools that you guys represent today, you're all in R1 institutions. And so there might be, let's say, external pressures originating at the university scale that are influencing the need to publish. But also internally, peer review is an excellent way of validating work, of signaling its relevance, and also in developing it. So I would love to hear from the 4 directors, what is the role of publication in your respective programs? Where are the venues that you're seeking out? For instance, I'm guessing that you and your students are submitting to more field-specific journals. And then also I'll throw an underhand softball, and that is, what do you guys think, what suggestions might you have to both JAE and TAD of becoming more attractive journals for your students' work? Thanks.
They are the most attractive journals for my students' work.
Okay.
The JAE to me is among the top 5 journals in architecture all over the world. People jump up and down when they have a draft accepted for the JAE. It's the field as the entire field that has low impact factors. And it's low impact factors everywhere. It's the Journal of Architecture, it's the Journal for Architectural Historians, it's ARQ in Cambridge, it's everywhere, it's the entire field. It's not a problem of I think specific journals. I think it's the lack of tradition in the profession of architecture to really read and follow the discussions on peer review publications. We have a tradition of trade journals where the image is what is leading the conversation. It's the render, it's the photograph, that's our tradition. And in part, it's good. It's not a bad thing per se, but it creates a kind of an insulated discourse of renders and images and the production of aesthetically pleasing diagrams that don't really engage the other disciplines right on our side, like engineering or sociology or urban history. And so I think it's a challenge for the discipline as a whole to really look at peer review as an important source of knowledge.
I would say that for us, but both in the MAD program and as well as the other master's level graduate programs in my school, IJAC, the Journal of Architectural Computing, Acadia, are important forums for dissemination. One of the interesting issues for a relatively short program, for a 2-year program, is when is that research project happening? What is the cycle for review, for publication? So in a way, you could imagine that the students might be getting their work out there after they've left the program, which is fine. It's still wonderful, obviously, for them to disseminate their work. But I could imagine that there might be other ways through, and this already happens in some forums, through poster sessions or other online modes of dissemination, that might be able to operate under a much faster cycle, so that students, while they're still very much in the program, have means to get their voice and their work out there and put it on a larger stage.
In our programs, the expectation is that students produce at least one publishable paper at the end of their MS program. Usually, if it's a journal article, it happens after they graduated. They work a little bit with the professor, and some of them publish in a conference before they graduate. In terms of the venues published, I would agree, Chris, with you that we do go towards topic-specific publications more. And as I heard your question, I really thought about why we do that. And the idea there is, I guess, to make sure that the publication is reviewed by someone who is active in the research. At the same time, I realize that as reviewers, we are not tied to any particular journal. We do serve in multiple journals. And one way to do it is to maybe create a pool of reviewers from architectural schools with specific targeted keywords that would ensure that a paper is reviewed by a person who could provide constructive, useful feedback. Other than that, I see no reason why, for example, in my field, TAD would not be one journal to go right away.
Yeah. Now, Malika, let me confirm really quickly that all of the peer-reviewed content published in TAD has no less than 3 subject experts, external subject experts, to provide comments. And then as it develops, the editorial board is then a little bit more hands-on in conjunction with follow-through with the comments of those subject experts. Another thing, we can move on to other subjects, but I also recognize that as a membership organization, we are served by 2 journals. By comparison, the ASME, American Society of Mechanical Engineers, have 39 journals, and the American Society of Civil Engineers has 37. So,
Chris, you just gave Carol a heart attack. You know that, right?
Yeah,
Carol, who has to support those journals. She's
right.
just fallen off her chair.
Sure. Well, and maybe Michael as well. I think he's on the call. But it does make sense to me to some degree that if our membership organization is in some view perhaps underserved by its peer review capacity, that there would be desirability for the amount of post-professional research production happening, that it does find other venues and other channels.
But I think the question that Corey puts in the chat is a good one, asking, are we not publishing enough, or are we just not citing papers as much as other fields, right?
It's a numbers game, and you guys know this better than anybody, how, the big, the high impact factor journals want articles that cite other articles from that journal in order to drive the ratings up. Sorry if this comes as a shock to anybody, but you can game it. And I think, architecture is so much larger than landscape architecture, but this is the same conversation we have in landscape architecture. It's just that we're very small. The academic sector, the research producing and the research consuming sector of our professions are relatively new, relatively young. We haven't really formed a culture of citation. And we're just, I think that when it comes to impact factors, we cannot compare ourselves with other disciplines in the social sciences or in engineering. We're never going to get there. But this is a point I would make to the promotion and tenure committees, that all impact factors are relative to the cultural context that they represent. And, not to get too hung up on that. I meant that as encouragement.
Yes.
I also wanted to say something about publications. At NC State, the PhD program, one of the classic formats there for a dissertation is actually a 3-article series, and the DDES program maps onto that very nicely. But I also I think it would be interesting when we talk about impact to think about other kinds of academic products, whether that's an installation, a web application, a community engagement, a portfolio of work. There are lots of models in the UK, for example, for what a dissertation looks like, and it's way more elastic than the classic dissertation, like the one I wrote, which still sits there, that are far more active and have legs in ways that perhaps we're not taking advantage of. So as we are developing the DDES program, we're actually open to new models for the dissertation itself that generates knowledge in different formats. Now, the role of peer review, though, is essential. It really is. And to have more than just an academic committee serving as a kind of surrogate peer review panel, but to bring these ideas out into the open scholarly forum and to have them vetted is probably the most important dynamic. And figuring out how to do that is going to take some work.
Yeah, I mean, even just in the past sort of 10 to 15 years, people thinking about a collection of essays as opposed to a monograph, which was always the kind of go-to for a PhD, I think, signals a shift for certain. So I'm looking at the time and being mindful. My earbuds just died, so I know I've been on Zoom too long today, but all's well. I just want to thank the 4 panelists. Thank you for the presentations. Thank you for the comments afterwards. Also, thank you to Mike Monti from ACSA and Carol as well for helping to set up the session. And thanks to Chris. It was actually really fun to start talking through the session with you over the past now year or so, I think. So thank you. Chris, any last thoughts?
Yes, I also want to extend thanks to our ACSA colleagues, to the panelists for really ramping up for today. also to the audience. And so it does strike me that some of you, of course, have academic appointments, but also perhaps administrative appointments within post-professional degree programs. Perhaps today is the first of a series of conversations in which we throw more emphasis on these particular degree programs and continue to expand the view, if you will. So I want to welcome feedback, either through email directly to ACSA or to Mark and myself. But I think that this is an important territory, if you will, or space for research production, and would love to really help to leverage or increase the visibility of these types of programs for ACSA's future. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. All right.
Thank you for putting this together. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Good job.